So today we're going to begin with chapter 4, with Shloka a Day series. In today's chapter, Srila Prabhupada has translated it to transcendental knowledge. So this transcendental knowledge is knowledge about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the relationship that the Jivatma has with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In chapter 2, we have already discovered that there is a difference between the body and the soul. We've understood the properties of the soul. We've understood the duties and responsibilities of the soul, both on the material platform as well as the spiritual platform. So now we're going to get into that stage where we learn a little bit more about the Supreme Lord and our eternal position in relation to Him as His servants. So we'll begin with text 1 today. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyayam Vivasman Manave Praha Manurikshvakave Bravit. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manurikshvakave Bravit. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manurikshvakave Bravit. Please recite after me. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Imam Vivasvate Yogam
Imam Vivasvate Yogam
Proktavanaham Avyayam
Proktavanaham Vyayam
Vivasvan Manave Praha
Vivasvan Manave Praha
Manurikshvakave Bravit.
Manurikshvakave Bravit.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Imam Vivasvate Yogam
Imam Vivasvate Yogam
Proktavanaham Avyayam
Proktavanaham
Vivasvan Manave Praha
Vivasvan Manave Praha
Manurikshvakave Bravit.
Manurikshvakave Bravit.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Imam Vivasvate Yogam
Imam Vivasvate Yogam
Proktavanaham Avyayam
Proktavanaham
Vivasvan Manave Praha Manurikshvakave Bravit. Word for word meaning and translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Shri Bhagavanu Vacha.
Shri
Shri
Bhagavan
Bhagavan Vacha
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
Set.
Imam,
Imam,
this,
this,
Vivasvate,
Vivasvate,
unto the sun god,
And to
unto
the
the Sun
sun
God,
God.
Yogam,
Yogam.
the science of one's relationship to the Supreme,
The
the
science
science
of
of one's
one's
relationship to the
relationship
Supreme,
to the Supreme.
Proktavan,
Proktavan,
instructed,
Instructor.
instructed,
aham,
Aham.
I,
I.
avyayam,
Avyayam.
imperishable,
Imperishable.
imperishable,
Vivaswan,
Vivasvan,
Vivaswan, the sun god's name,
Vivasvan, Sun
Sun
God,
God's name.
Manave,
Manave.
unto the Father of mankind,
And to the
unto
Father
the
of the
Father of
mankind.
mankind,
of the name Vaivasvata,
of the name Vaivasvata,
Vaivasvata.
Praha,
Praha,
told,
told,
Manuhu,
Manu,
the Father of mankind,
the Father of mankind,
Ikshvakave,
Ikshvakave,
unto King Ikshvaku,
unto King Ikshvaku,
Abravit, said,
said,
translation, the personality of Godhead,
The personality of Godhead.
personality of Godhead,
Lord Shri Krishna said,
Lord Krishna
Krishna
said,
said,
I instructed this imperishable science of yoga
I instruct this imperishable science of yoga
to the sun god
to the Sun God,
God,
Vivaswan,
Vivasvan,
and Vivaswan
and Vivasvan
Son,
instructed it to Manu,
instructed it to Manu,
the
Manu,
father of mankind,
Father of mankind,
mankind,
and Manu in turn
and Manu in turn
instructed it to Ikshvaku.
Manu instructed it to Ikshvaku.
So, what is the Lord doing here? First of all, he is introducing the topic of this supreme science, this yoga that is imperishable, avyayam. This supreme science, what is this science about? The relationship between the Supreme Lord and the Jivatma. So the Lord is saying this science of the relationship between the Jivatma and Paramatma is imperishable, which means it eternally exists. Nothing can change that relationship. And then what is the Lord doing? The Lord is saying this science has existed eternally, and this science has been understood in the parampara system. So, where does this parampara originate? This parampara originates with the Supreme Lord himself. So he has spoken this science, we discovered some 120 million years ago to Vivaswan, the sun god. And then somewhere along the way, Vivaswan instructed that same knowledge that he had received from the Lord to Vaivasvata Manu, the father of mankind. That is around how many million years ago, we don't know. And then Manu, in turn, instructs it to Ikshvaku. That was around 2 million years ago. So the Lord is clearly chalking out two things here. The science of the relationship between him and the Jivatma, and how the science was taught by him and has come down in this parampara system. Which means the Lord is clearly indicating that this science should be continued to be understood and studied only in the parampara system. which means you must not and should not independently read and try to understand the science on your own. If you do, you will be bewildered for sure. So there has to be a teacher-student relationship in how the science is learned. So behind all of the Lord's statements and instructions, there is deep understanding that we have to take away from it. So one is the science, which is avyayam, imperishable. And two is that this knowledge has to be received in the parampara system.